This is a study of rich and poor school districts and students' ability to read online and conduct research. And I'll give you the ending so you can be thinking about how we got there. It sometimes helps interpret a fast presentation. The ending is that we have a reading achievement gap with NAEP and state reading achievement tests, of course, between rich and poor. But when we went in to look at how that gap compared with online reading, it's even greater. And when we controlled for prior knowledge differences and when we controlled for differences in state reading achievement, the gap was still there. We think part of the reason is an instructional lack of access in the poor schools, not because they don't have the technology, but because they're so focused on teaching to state reading assessments that have none of these reading skills in them. There's no time in the day for teaching online reading comprehension skills. That's the end of the story. So there's the title, and this is a very complicated project. It's part of a IES research grant where we're developing 24 valid, reliable, and practical assessments of online reading comprehension. It's a very large team. Everyone has contributed to this in important ways, and so I'm just the talking head up here today. The research question is this: is there an achievement gap in the ability to read on the internet and conduct research between students who attend rich and poor school districts? And our theoretical framework, we frame this within a dual-level theory of new literacies that has been emerging. The basic problem from theory is that if literacy is deictic and it's continually changing, then how do you construct a theory when it's all, and how do you study it when everything is changing so quickly? And so we propose that there's an uppercase, we should be thinking about uppercase theories of new literacy that are more stable based on what's happening at the ground with all of these different theoretical frameworks, from multi-literacies to multimodality theories to new literacies of texting, of social networking. All of those are capturing the change, and we should look at what the commonalities are across all of those for the uppercase theory of new literacies. And so we framed it in those two different types of new literacies, uppercase and lowercase. Uppercase framed social practices largely. We included wikis, text chat, social network, email, search engines, and so forth. And the lowercase was framed within the new literacies of online reading comprehension framework that's been emerging. Related research in 5 different areas very quickly. First of all, there are profound, intransigent, and important achievement gaps in traditional reading comprehension and offline reading. NAEP scores, 25 points is pretty much all the way across if you look at the history of NAEP scores. They present it in different ways, but it's always about 25 points. And if you look at research in online reading comprehension, we see this as a problem-based reading process, that there are these elements to it, and we use those elements then in our assessment, and that online reading is not, I like to use the phrase, it's not isomorphic. It's not that it's completely different. There's an overlapping of different skills and strategies, but it is different. It's not identical. It's not isomorphic. There are differences between the two. The research on internet access at home and school, there's some data here showing that there's less home access among the poor, of course, and there's this speculation that instructional access at school may be affected by state tests that have none of these skills on them. And this is just speculation. We don't have data on this, but I don't know if you're in poor schools or not, but when I am, that's all they're doing is teaching right to that test. The pressure is so great on them. And in rich districts, they have a little more freedom and flexibility, and they have greater home access. Research on prior knowledge is also important. We tried to control for this because topic knowledge is differentially distributed. It might be affected by rich-poor and or high-low reading achievement differences. So this was an element, a factor that we wanted to measure and then control between the two districts. Our previous work on assessments in the 2 columns on the far right have indicated that the assessments that we have been using are very reliable and they're very valid. But there's one big problem, and that's that they're not stable. That is, once you develop one, in a couple of months, the websites will be changing. And here's just a minor change, but it ends up being very important. And Google, over the course of a year and a half, changed the presentation of information. So search strategies have to change. So if you define certain search strategies with one version, all of a sudden it changed, your assessment goes out the window. It's not stable. So that was an important problem for us, and we were trying to figure out how to determine a more stable assessment. At the same time, we wanted to evaluate this, see if there was an online reading achievement gap between rich and poor school districts. So let's take a look at the methods. Participants in this study are 205 seventh grade students, about equally distributed between rich and poor districts. We're referring to them here as Westtown and Easttown. Those aren't their real names, of course. But you can see the demographic data here. Westtown, the median family income is twice that of Easttown. And if you look at the third row here, the free and reduced lunch percentage is just staggering. It's about 14, 15 times greater in Easttown. So these are two very different districts in the state of Connecticut. Population sample is here. Here is the area that we're focusing our attention on right now. This is of greatest concern to us because we've got still some work to do. You can see we only use data where we got everything from everybody is what we did. We took a very conservative approach in the first cut at this. And the first time we went into Westtown, there were some technology issues, and we lost data. There were two assessments, so we got the second assessment on many of the kids. But if we didn't get both assessments, we didn't include them in the population, in the sample. So we lost data there. We lost data here from Easttown because it's a poor community and there's a lot of migration in and out. And we use sixth grade state reading test scores, and a lot of those kids were new to the district. We're taking a look at this with seventh grade test scores, which we now have. And so we'll have all of that data there. And this one, we're going to be doing an analysis of first and second test to see the correlation between the two. We already know that they correlate pretty highly, and so we may just plug in one score if we're missing one of the tests. Prior knowledge assessment is actually kind of interesting. This is a somewhat innovative way of doing it, but based on traditional ways of topic knowledge, verbal report, and idea unit analysis. Online, they get a question, write one thing about energy drinks and heart health. This was a heart health energy drinks task. And so they write something, okay? And then another box comes up, tell us another thing, and then there's a long pause. And after a long pause, after 15 seconds or so, if they don't write anything, then the button says, I don't know anything else. So they keep adding their prior knowledge until they run out, they run dry, and then they move on. Internet use survey. We had 3 items we used. This represents home access. They have a computer and they can view online video. That's a broadband indicator. So we know that they have a computer and they have broadband. Both of these are right. And school instruction, the item we looked at in this study is how often have you been required to use the internet for a school assignment. Offline reading comprehension was a state reading assessment and high reliability, of course. And the ORCA closed is what we refer to as our online reading comprehension measure. ORCA stands for Online Reading Comprehension Assessment, and it's closed because we populated our server space with all of the web pages we're using, with a search engine that we create. We didn't create it, but our programmers created that. And the social network was all there. So it's in a bounded, closed, restricted environment, and it represents the internet. Looks pretty similar. We use a data tracking tool. We have video screen capture, and we have 2 types of topics. We're looking at science and human body systems. We have a learn more about task, our energy drinks, heart healthy, a little more open-ended. And then we have a take a position task, a little more restricted. Can Chihuahua dogs cure asthma? You may not know this, but in some communities, this is common knowledge that they can. Some of our Hispanic communities. It's an Aztec myth. So this is a representation of the social network site where the text and chat messages come in. And this is Brianna. It's just an avatar. And she's saying, hi there, I'm a student at Kylie. The president of the school board needs your help. She wants you to research the question, how do energy drinks affect heart health? And, I'm doing great. And then check your email, find the message from our principal, Mrs. Torres. When you read the message, type OK below. And then to find the email from Mrs. Torres, click here. So if you click there, this is just a representation. It actually works much better than this. And actually, Elena and Lisa have laptops with the assessments on it. And if you have a chance during the conference, feel free to contact them, and they'll just show you. It's really, now it's nice. When we did the study, it was not nice. But now it's very nice. It's one click, and it starts and plays. It's very nice. Okay, so if you click here, then what happens is you get an inbox with 4 email messages. And this is actually our first score point. It's a communicate score point. Can students on the first click identify the correct email message from the context up here? Do you see that? So you've got information about the name and the topic, and then we've got traditional multiple choice distractors, and this is the one, of course, that they need to click on. And if you click on that one, then the email message pops up and you can read it. If you click on the other ones, you read distractor email messages, and eventually you figure that's not it, that's not it, that's not it. And we get a lot of, some students work their way down here and then finally get to the end, and it's they don't get a score point for that aspect of communicate. So, okay, so here's the email message. It defines the task, and what they have to do is they have to do this research, and they have to email the president of the school board, and we've given the address here. If at the end they reply to this person, the principal, they don't get the score point for the correct address. Do you see that? This is one of our communicate score points. So, so that's the task. Then during the task, there are some they have to locate 4 different websites, summarize them. This is our synthesis area, summarizing, then synthesize across websites to draw conclusions and so forth. But this is a locate task here, and Brianna is coming out. By the way, these last for about 5 seconds, so the kids can read them. Then the next one comes in. They can read it. Then the next one comes in. So it's like a chat sort of display. Anyway, she's at Brianna saying, hey, send me this news article. Can you find it? And so they click here and open up this other browser, and that's where the search engine is. It's Google. They may type in, we look at the keywords. That's one of our locate skill evaluations. If they have a good keyword search, and we have a criteria for that, they'll get a point, and if they don't, they get a 0. So here's somebody who used a good keyword search, and now we're looking at, can they read and make an inference to identify the site, the correct site, on one click. And so we've got traditional ads up here, and we've got a distractor here in the first position, and the target site is usually in the second position. Again, we want to make sure if kids are just clicking and looking, they're going to click here without even thinking. The kids who read that are actually reading search engine results will get that, and then on the first click, they'll get a point. Then this is critical evaluation area, and what's happening here is we're looking at 4 score points here. One, the site is behind, and they can click and bring it up forward. But can they find the author? Is the author an expert? An evaluation of expertise. And then point of view, an evaluation of point of view. And what's not showing here, it hasn't come up yet, is do you think this site is reliable, why or why not? And so those are 4 score points in terms of evaluation that we check. And here's the final task here. There's the email message, and you can see it's addressed to the school board president. They'll get a point there. They don't have a subject, so they won't get a point there. And they have a really nice message here. Actually, I typed this. Most of our kids didn't do quite this nicely. But this is an unfamiliar high-status person. And if you just send a message without your name, I mean, that is socially inappropriate for a message to somebody that you don't know that's high status. And so we look for 1 score point for having all of this. This is based on argumentation structure. Do they have a claim and evidence for it? And then we move on. Okay, the scoring, we have 4 score points in each of those 4 areas, 16 total. There are 2 of them, a total of 32. Each area has 3 process score points and 1 product score point. Product is sort of the outcome, and the process are 3 score points to get to that outcome. And the process points were subjectively scaled by experts. We tried to get easy, a little harder, and then hardest process score point, and then the product was hardest of all. They're scaling reasonably well, not perfectly, but reasonably well. Results? Okay, well, we got good reliability. Oh, behind now. And there's a traditional gap in state reading achievement. Here is a gap in online reading achievement. Let me go back. Just in relative terms, it's more pronounced, but they're on different scales. So what we needed to do then was to evaluate it in terms of, we used a MANCOVA analysis, and we used as covariates offline reading. That is, we made equal their state reading achievement scores, and then we made equal their prior topic knowledge scores, and then we evaluated means here to see if there was a significant difference in means, and that difference was sustained. So we still have a significant difference in online reading comprehension between rich and poor students. Here's the computer in my home. Actually, the poor kids, there's no difference here, but the numbers were just a little bit higher for them. And here are the poor kids in online video. And this is quite surprising to us, but it's not, it's what we hear in school reports, what we think is reasonably close to what the kids are reporting in Connecticut. Now, this is Connecticut, not places. And here's the chi-square on this question: how often have you been required to use the internet for a school assignment? And these were the response categories here. The greatest difference appeared with never, and that's what's represented here. Almost 8 times as many students in the poor district report never being required to use the internet for a school assignment. So the discussion, well, we think we've got a reasonably reliable assessment measure. This was a pre-pilot study. We're doing a pilot study now with these 24 assessments. So we moved ahead. We've made changes. We actually learned quite a bit from just doing this and analyzing the data. And so we've implemented those changes, and right now we're doing a representative state sample of 800 7th graders in the state of Connecticut and 800 in the state of Maine. There'll be representative samples. We've got a very good sampling plan, and so we'll be able to tell how our students in Connecticut and Maine perform on 24 different assessments: 8 multiple choice format, 8 closed like this, and 8 in an open internet environment. And we're looking at which format seems to perform the best. And what else is there about all? Oh, they're parallel. They're all parallel. So we have Chihuahua dogs here unclosed. We have it in multiple choice. We have it in open. So we can see how Chihuahua dogs, can Chihuahua dogs cure asthma? It's a lung issue. Performs across all 3. And the gap was sustained. That was the end of the story I told you at the beginning. The mean scores, I don't know if you noticed that or not, were nearly twice as great for the rich district compared to the poor district. And then in addition, the MANCOVA results, when we controlled for the 2 important variables, offline and prior knowledge, we still had a very significant achievement gap. And there's some indication that this gap may be caused by differential instructional practices caused by state reading assessments, and the focus on teaching to the test on items that have nothing to do with these kinds of skills that we've tried to represent here. I would not go so far as to make that a really strong claim at this point. I mean, this is just an initial study. There are all kinds of other interpretations that we're thinking about before we send this out for publication, but there's a possibility that that could be the case. And if that is a possibility, then we've got something for all of us to think about here, and I'll let you just read it on your own. This is a hugely important issue because our public policies may in fact be producing just the opposite of what we want to accomplish.